So here we are back again. We have the stool that we're going to put together, put the steps on now. Before we do that though, we have to route that 45-degree angle on the ends and the front edge of the steps. So I want to introduce you to some routers here. Routers are very versatile machines, meaning they can do all kinds of different cuts with all kinds of different guides that you use. You can do most anything, very honestly, with the router and the correct setup. Some routers come with them that they have variable speeds. So you see on this router here, if I plug this in, and whenever you plug a router in, you want to have it sitting upright. You want to have it sitting the blades not touching down on the table here, because routers don't have a magnetic switch. They have an on-off toggle switch. And in a classroom environment, you don't know what the person in front of you did. And sometimes it's not real easy to tell which on and off. I can see this is off and on. It's written there, but that's not always easy to see. So you want to have it in a spot that if it turns on right away, you can unplug it and you haven't done any damage. So right now, it's plugged in. It's ready to go. I have my toggle switch here. And I can control my RPMs. This one says on the top here that the RPMs are from 8,000 to 24,000 RPM. So that's the range of RPM that this router has. And what's the difference in speeds all about? Well, a lot of times bit diameter. Sometimes I have a real large bit that's going in there, and maybe I want to change the RPMs and bring them down for that reason. So when I go to a big bit like that, I usually have to consult the internet and find out what speed they want me at for making that cut. Otherwise, I generally use a pretty high speed for most everything. Okay, this is a rabbiting bit that you saw on there. This is a small, what's called a trim router. And right now the bit that's on there is a roundover bit. So what that would produce is a quarter round that would go on there. This is not plugged in, by the way, and I am going to take this bit out and I'm going to replace it with the bit that we're going to be using, which is a 45-degree angle bit. So a lot of routers come with 2 wrenches. I have routers that you have 2 nuts on them, and you hold the one and you rotate the other one to loosen it or to tighten it. A lot of newer routers have and a lot of trim routers too. This is a trim router, so these almost all have this. But they have a little spindle lock that if I get into the right spot there, it locks in. As long as I'm pressing the spindle lock there, I can go ahead and take a wrench to it and loosen it. So I'm going to loosen this off. So I can take this bit out. This bit has a 1/4-inch shank on the bottom of it, so it would have to have the 1/4-inch collet that's on there. Routers a lot of times come with a 1/4-inch and a 1/2-inch collet, so you can change them out. I'm going to put this bit back in my bit box here. And we're going to put on this one. Now, this is a brand new router bit, so you can see that it has like this plastic coating on it. It's a protective coating so that the knives don't get chipped. Most cutters that we use in the classroom have a carbide cutting surface on them, which means that although the main part of this router bit is steel, the part that's actually doing the cutting is a harder material, and that material is carbide. So I'm just taking off all of this protective coating before I start to use this router bit. You can see it just kind of like peels off. And you know, when I get my saw blades sharpened also over the summertime, which I'll be doing shortly, he dips them in like a rubber so that all the teeth on the outside, the circumference there is covered in that, and it protects them. So this is what it looks like. We have a bearing at the top that spins nicely. The bearing at the top is going to be riding against the edge of the material, and we'll be cutting our 45 off with that. When you have a table set up like I'm going to do here, we can use the bearing or we can use the fence. or you can use them both. But you want to have some kind of a guide. You don't want to just freehand this bit here, certainly not. Okay? So this is going to go in. And if you notice that a router bit has a little bit of a round over at the top there. So when you go in, you don't want to go in so far that you get to that. You want the collet to be clamping on the uniform diameter, that 1/4 inch diameter. So I'll tighten this up now. That's tight. I'm going to throw away all this protective coating stuff. And I'm going to put the router back in here. In this instance, it's more easily said than done. So I'm going to go in and grab. There's a little knob in there that I have to get onto to be able to shape this down. So now I have it in. So I'm going to just lock that there because I'm going to set the depth of that after I have that locked. In this particular router setup that I have here, it's just a table surface. The router tables that we have legs and everything on them, but I wanted to have one that was easy to take away and just hang up in my shop here easily enough. So this just mounts to my table here, to my work table. I bring that over, and that's pretty stable for me. Okay. So I could at this point, I could go ahead and set this so that I can just go ahead with my using my bearing, and that's probably not the safest way because it has an open bit just in the middle of the table there. So I could put on a fence. So this fence has a straight edge to it, and then it has an edge that I'm able to put the bearing, the router bit inside the bearing there. To show you, it looked like that. So when I run across, I'm just hitting the portion that I want to hit. So I am going to first set this to my size. So I'm going to take this out for a moment, and I want to mark on the end of this. First, I'll look at it and say, which do I want? I want this to be my back, my front, and my ends. So I want to mark on here 3/16 by 3/16. Remember, that was a 3/16 chamfer that we had for the plans that you were looking at there. I am going to mark 3/16. And then since I have a 45-degree angle on here, I'm just going to go ahead and draw that across. Okay, so now I have something to look at when I go ahead and set the router up. So I'm going to bring you over where you can see this a little bit better here. Get you elevated there to some degree. Okay, so here's my angle on the corner here, 3/16 by 3/16, 45-degree angle. And I want to bring my blade down and rotate. I'm still unplugged, and rotate it till my bearing touches and my bit is right at that 3/16 by 3/16. Okay, so I want to show you what that looks like when I have this thing set up. So you can see my mark there. When I braid to that bearing and I bring my blade around, you can see that that's going to hit right on my corner there, right how I want it to be. Okay? So I want to see if I can get my fence set up that I can use that in addition. So I want my bearing to be perfectly aligned with my fence, because that's the way the setup is looking right now. And I'm just going to use a straight edge. So I'm going to hold the straight edge to my bearing, bring my fence up against it so that they're in line with one another. And then I'll grab some clamps. you want to watch that whenever you set up clamps here. I'm going to just rotate the blade and see if I'm going to hit anything. Looks pretty clear. So you want your clamps to be back so that you have this whole surface to walk across them for making this cut. So I remember I have to do my fronts and my ends, and this is going to be my back. So I'm going to make sure that I have that written down. The other thing I'd like to have is when I go through the edge grain here, it's cutting in the direction of my grain. But when I do my end grain going across like this, it's cutting perpendicular to it. So I have to watch for chip out on the end here. So when I do this, I'm going to grab a block or something. In fact, I have just this thing laying here. If I bring that along the back side, then that'll be where my chip out happens on this piece rather than on the piece that I'm cutting here. Okay? So routers produce a lot of noise, they produce a lot of dust. Generally, if I'm doing a lot of routing, I don't do it in the shop. I go outside and I get my sawhorse out there and I do the routing out there because I don't like to clean all this stuff up. But today I'm going to do it in the shop. So I do it in the shop. I'll put some hearing protection on, and I'll also put this on because I'm in a small confined shop here. I'm not in a big shop. I'm going to do the edge first. Alright, so we have front edge, ends, all beveled now. So this is going to sit onto our step stool like that. And then we have those corners all cut. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue with this. I'll do the other leg, other step as well. And then I'm going to sand them down. And I'll show you how to attach them after I've sanded them.